Well, good Friday morning, Meteorologist Adam Feick here. I wanted to hop on, touch a little bit what's going to be happening the end of the month next couple of weeks. So, while October started and September ended very dry, it felt like summer. Good news, we're going to continue to see some changes that we've already have been seeing. Not really going to see a whole lot of extra rainfall, though chances will start to go up. Not going to be a whole lot of moisture to pull an above average precip, but at least we're going to see more frequent chances for showers and storms, as well as greater chances to see some cooler fall-like temperatures as well. And starting point wanted to touch on is actually looking at what's happening overseas. So we're focusing on the Korean Peninsula. If you overlay a map, let's pull that up. That's basically like if you overlap the Korean Peninsula with Indiana. So what's happening right now in East Asia is we're seeing more so high pressure. So notice you can see these shades of orange and reds, pretty much high pressure at the surface. And really notice through the next couple of days, at least in Asia, we start to see a low pressure that tries to develop. Notice towards October 12th. This is really as we head towards Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. If you overlay this on a map, that's a low pressure moving through the Hudson Bay, moving through on northern Ontario and Quebec. So what's going to allow us notice a weak cold front that starts to try to develop and start to swing through. So what basically this means is 8 days later from what we've seen in Asia. So this is on Sunday the 12th. 8 days later, so that would likely be October 20th, is we'll see the potential for a cold front to swing through here in the U.S. And notice even as we head through the next really week or so, going to be generally high pressure. Notice towards the 18th, you see another low pressure cold front move through East Asia. Even towards the 21st, another low pressure that moves on through. So signs overseas right now is that spots into China are a little bit more active, likely means that the northern U.S. is going to continue to be active. Another fun trick is actually looking at what's happening over, let's call this the North Pacific. So you see Alaska, you can see the Aleutian Islands. And again, as we head towards Friday the 10th, well, that's today actually, notice there's this big, strong low pressure over the western part of the Aleutian Islands. Basically, 16 days later, as you see stuff over the Aleutian Islands, it starts to move into the U.S. as well. So let's actually overlay that on a map here. So if you see the Aleutian Islands, it's basically moving through the U.S. as well. So notice this is a snapshot of actually a low pressure that moved through the Aleutian Islands a couple days ago. Basically, that means 16 days later from the 8th, we're going to see potential for a low pressure to move through. So, as we look at the Aleutian Islands and what's happening there, again, notice how we see 1, 2, 3, even the potential for a fourth low pressure to move through. This is just within the next 2 weeks. So really, I have a list of dates. Let's see those. Really through the end of the month, we're seeing the potential for 5 to 6 different low pressures moving through the central U.S., either through the Ohio Valley or just further north. This is going to bring multiple cold fronts. This is going to allow multiple shots for cold air as well, but unfortunately not really looking like a whole lot in the way of moisture. Now, so the good news is this means, again, it's going to be a little bit more active. We're going to see a little bit more in the way of a active jet stream. So notice this is as we head towards Tuesday afternoon. Notice the jet stream a little bit more calm, and then watch what happens. You start to see West Coast. You start to see a lot of kinks in the jet stream as we end the month. Lots of low pressures to move through with very strong jet stream. Now this model run is 340 hours out. It's not going to be very accurate. But what this hints at is that we're going to see a very active jet stream potentially bringing those low pressures. Now, like I mentioned, there's not going to be a whole lot in the way of moisture. We actually have a cold front that's going to try to swing through today into tomorrow. But notice here when we look at, this is a couple thousand feet up into the air. This is at 700 millibars. Level of the atmosphere we look at to see where showers and storms are at least going to develop. So this is 18Z, which is about 2 p.m. later today. Notice we see a little bit of moisture, but out ahead of the front, very dry. Behind the front, lots of these browns, so it's going to be very dry. Typically, when you see this chart, when you see these shades of blue, that's where you have a consistency of moisture. As the cold front swings through, notice it's really just shades of green. So when we look at the atmosphere, it's going to be very, very dry. And even if we pull up a little sounding, notice lower levels of the atmosphere. There's a lot of dry air, especially close to the ground. So if any rain is able to develop, it's going to struggle to actually reach the ground. So this cold front likely is not going to bring much in the way of rain, but it's going to cool temperatures actually a little bit as well. But even notice moving forward, we have multiple low pressures. Again, we have one that can move through the 14th, the 15th. Notice you see the cold front trying to swing through. But again, it's just shades of green. Out ahead of the front, it's brown. Behind the front, notice all the moisture is further west. So even as we head towards the early to middle parts of next week and we see that next cold front move on through, it's really not going to bring much in the way of moisture. It's not going to bring much in the way of rain, but it's at least going to be more active. It can bring some more frequent cool shots. Now, as we look at our low pressures, again, notice really the next couple of days we have actually a high pressure that starts to move in behind that first front. So notice, let's call this Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We see a high pressure actually coming in from, you can see that from Alberta, Manitoba, moving through Saskatchewan, and it actually dips into, you can see the southeast, you can see the Carolinas. So spots further southeast actually see the potential for cooler air, because if this low pressure moves in from Canada, there's no warmth to it. There's going to be cooler air behind it. So actually, if we look at our temperatures at that same time period, notice as we head towards Tuesday, Wednesday, especially Tuesday, notice Tuesday afternoon. The core of the heat is especially south. You can see cooler temperatures, especially overnight, start to invade in. Even notice Thursday afternoon, notice the core of the heat across Texas, even Florida. In the afternoon hours, again, potentially, we see temperatures stuck in the 60s. Even spots you can see into the northeast stuck in the 50s, well below average. So really through the next couple of days, as we see these low pressures move through, we're not going to see consistent warmth. We're not going to see consistent cool. As the jet stream gets very active, we're going to see sort of a mosh posh of temperatures. It's going to be a temperature roller coaster, really. So my latest outlook here for temperature-wise, notice the 14th through the 31st. I really have much of the, let's call it northeast. Actually, let's shut this off really quick. Notice through much of the northeast, even Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, I have it below average. This just means that there's going to be a more frequent chance for cooler temperature. It doesn't mean it's going to be cooler the whole time. Doesn't mean we can't see warmth. It just means there's going to be more frequent shots of these cooler air, like what we saw as that last cold front moved through. So Wednesday, Thursday, we were stuck in the 60s. And even today, likely stuck in the 60s and low 70s, just right at average. Well, upper 60s, low 70s, right at average. But notice through the central U.S., it's going to continue to be very warm, above average. And then West Coast, of course, where we see a lot of those low pressures developing, of course, that's going to be below average as well. And even looking at our moisture content as well, notice especially across the south. Jet stream keeps a lot of these low pressures north. It's going to be hard to get moisture there. Even spots noticed through Nebraska, Kansas, even really, I would call this southern Illinois, southern Indiana, much of Ohio, Pennsylvania, into New York. With these systems, it's not going to be a whole lot of moisture, so it's going to be hard to get a good amount of precip with any of these, but there's higher chances to see precip. So we're going to notice more days with where you see those pesky 10 to 30% chances for stray to isolated showers, storms. Not going to be widespread, big rain-producing storms. It's just going to be more frequent chances for these showers and storms as well. So again, likely means that we're going to see more frequent shots for cooler air, but it's not going to be consistently cooler. So it's going to be really back and forth. So actually, let me pull that up. Let's get a good idea of that. So here is a look at temperatures really the next couple of days. So can quickly go through this. Notice even through Sunday as we see that upper level low pressure. Again, notice potentially Sunday morning temperatures a lot cooler as well. So actually let's move me over there. So notice Monday, we see those temperatures back into the 70s, a little bit above average. Tuesday out ahead of the front. Again, we see those temperatures above average. The front moves through. So by the time we get to Wednesday, we're back into the 60s. Overnight lows again, potentially in the 40s and 30s. So we could see that return brisk for frost potentially the end of next week as well. And into Friday, notice again, temperatures potentially even cooler, potentially cool as well. Notice the 60s, potentially cooler. Overnight lows, 40s and 50s. and really we just stay that way. You see a couple of days where we get warmer. So notice by that, let's call this the third week of October, Monday the 20th. We see temperatures getting back to average in the upper 60s, possibly in the 70s. And then again, another low pressure moves on through. And you see temperatures cooling back down, especially northern U.S. But notice a lot of the central U.S. stays pretty consistently warm. That area that I had in red. So really expect things to get a little bit more active. Expect things to not stay as frequently warm, where we saw 26 days in a row of above average temperatures, even 11 straight days of the 80s. At this point, it's likely going to be hard to see temperatures get back to the 80s consistently. We may again have a day or two when we see high pressure move in, that we could get to the upper 70s, possibly low 80s. But generally better chances to see the low 70s, upper 60s the next really 2 weeks. And then as we end the month, we'll have to watch again for some more low pressure systems. Still too early at this time to really time things out. But a couple dates to be watching for. As we end the month especially, we see that weak low pressure October 14th through the 16th. That's Monday, Tuesday, potentially into Wednesday. We see another cold front, the 18th through the 20th. Again, that's going to be a low pressure that's further north. We're going to get these weak disturbances that move through north, again, lack of moisture, potentially multiple rounds of these disturbances. We can see one, again, the 17th and 18th, the 19th, 20th, 23rd, 24th, but then as we head towards the end of the month, especially as we get closer to Halloween, so really October 24th and on is when we could potentially see these bigger systems bringing us some needed rainfall and some more consistent cool temperatures as well. That's it for now. We'll continue to have more updates. Just expect things to get more active. We're not going to continue to see consistent warmth. We're not going to see consistent cold either. It's going to really be back and forth between these warmer and cooler temperatures, as well as high pressure and some rain chances. Again, not expecting a whole lot in the way of rain. Just expect there to be more consistent low-end chances that really doesn't total up to a whole lot in the way of rainfall. Of course, if you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. More than happy to help. Till then, have a great rest of your weekend.